is a particular kind of loneliness that has no name in any language I know, and almost everyone over the age of 25 has felt it at least once. It comes late at night, usually, when the apartment is quiet and the phone has finally stopped buzzing and you find yourself sitting in a room that suddenly feels too still. And in that stillness, a thought arrives. Not a loud thought, not a dramatic one, just a quiet observation that has been waiting in the back of your mind for months, maybe years, for a moment quiet enough to surface. The thought is this: everyone else is moving forward, and you are not. You scroll, maybe just for a second, just to confirm or disconfirm what you already know. And the evidence is everywhere. The friend from college announcing a promotion. The acquaintance from the old neighborhood posting from a country you have always wanted to visit. The colleague who started 2 years after you, now leading a project that was supposed to be yours. The cousin who got married. The classmate who started a company. The faces, dozens of them, smiling out of small bright rectangles, holding up trophies of milestones you have not reached. In a race you do not remember entering and cannot remember the rules of. And the quiet observation in the back of your mind becomes louder. Behind. You are behind. What no one is going to tell you, because almost no one has lived long enough or looked closely enough to know it, is that this feeling, this specific, suffocating sense of being left in place while the world advances, is one of the most consistently misread signals the human psyche ever produces. The feeling is real. The interpretation is wrong. And the wrong interpretation, repeated long enough, can keep a person from recognizing what is actually happening to them at the most important developmental period of their life. So let's get this right. Slowly, carefully, with the time it deserves. Start with what your brain is actually doing when it generates this feeling, because once you see the machinery, the spell breaks. Your brain did not evolve in the world you live in now. It evolved across hundreds of thousands of years in environments where survival depended on one thing above almost all others: accurately reading the social field. Who was rising in status? Who was falling? Who had food? Who had allies? Who was a threat? Who was being left behind by the group? Because in those environments, being left behind was not a metaphor, it was death. And so the brain developed an exquisite, fast, mostly unconscious system for scanning the visible signals of others' progress and comparing them instantly and continuously to your own. That system is still running. It is still scanning. It is still comparing. It has no idea that the visible signals it is now processing are not the actual signals of other people's lives. They are curated highlights, optimized presentations, the small visible tip of vast and mostly hidden interior worlds you will never see. The system cannot tell the difference. It sees the announcement and registers it as data. It sees the milestone and registers it as data. It sees the smiling photograph and registers it as data. And it runs the same ancient calculation it would have run if you had walked into a clearing and seen another member of your tribe holding the carcass of an animal you failed to catch. Behind, behind, behind. This is why the feeling is so visceral. It is not a thought you are having. It is a survival signal being generated by a system that does not know the year it is living in. And here is what makes it worse, what makes it almost impossible to escape by force of reasoning alone. The system was specifically calibrated to find evidence that confirms the comparison. It is biased. It will scan past every neutral or contradicting signal in your environment and lock onto the one signal that confirms you are behind. This is not your imagination. This is not your weakness. This is a 30,000-year-old mechanism doing exactly what it was built to do, in an environment it was never designed for. And it will keep doing it whether you understand it or not, unless you also understand the deeper truth that all of this surface scanning has been completely missing. So here is the deeper truth. The most important things that ever happen to a human being do not happen on the surface. They happen underneath it, in a layer the comparison machinery has no instruments for, and they happen on a timeline that the surface has no language for. And the people who go through the most significant developmental transformations of their lives are almost always, during the transformation itself, the ones who look from the outside like nothing is happening to them. Their visible life has gone still. Their milestones have stopped arriving. Their announcements have dried up. The surface, to anyone scanning it, reads, stalled. And the surface is wrong because everything that matters is happening at a depth the surface cannot reach. There is a kind of bamboo, and this image keeps appearing in this work because there is nothing else in the natural world that demonstrates the principle so cleanly, that does something almost no one would tolerate if they were watching it. For 5 full years after it is planted, it produces nothing visible. No shoot, no measurable height, no external evidence whatsoever that anything is alive in the soil. To anyone scanning the surface, the planting failed. To anyone running a comparison machinery on bamboo, that bamboo is behind. The other plants are growing. The weeds are flourishing. The seasons are passing. And the bamboo, year after year, gives nothing back. 5 full years of apparent nothing. And then, in a single growing season, it grows 90 feet. 90 feet in one season after 5 years of nothing. The plants that grew quickly while it was apparently stalled are now dwarfed by it, will always be dwarfed by it, will never be able to catch up because they invested everything in visible height and the bamboo invested everything in roots. The 5 years of nothing were not nothing. The 5 years were the construction of a root system so deep and so structurally complete that when the season of growth arrived, the rise had a foundation that nothing in the environment could prevent or contain. The growth and the preparation for the growth were not separate events. They were the same event happening at 2 different depths on 2 different timelines, visible to 2 different kinds of observer. The surface scanners saw a failed planting. The ones who knew what to look for saw a future 100-foot tree being assembled underground. If something in you just leaned forward, if some quiet part of you just recognized itself in that description, take 1 second now and subscribe to this channel. Not because I am asking, because the work we do here is for the ones who already suspect that their stillness has been mistaken for stalling, and who are ready to find out what has actually been building beneath their visible life. Hit the bell while you are there so the next descent finds you. Now let's keep going, because what we are about to do is apply this principle to the actual structure of your life, not just to an image. Apply it now. Take the period in your life that you have been carrying around as evidence of being behind, that year or those years when nothing visible happened, when the surface of your life produced no announcements, no milestones, no posts, when the people around you kept advancing and you stayed where you were. You have been telling yourself a story about that period, and the story is the story your comparison machinery has been writing for you, and the story is wrong. Now write the other story, the story that asks, what was happening underground? What was being constructed in those years that the surface could not show? What capacities were forming? What old structures of belief and identity were being quietly dismantled? What deeper observation was your nervous system finally allowed to do, because the noisy forward motion of your earlier life had stopped consuming all its bandwidth? You will not be able to answer this quickly, and you should not try. The depth that was being built in those years is, by its nature, hard to articulate. You will not have a tidy narrative to offer. You will have a feeling, a strange, slightly disorienting feeling that the person who emerged from that period is not exactly the same person who entered it. That something inside you reorganized. That your relationship to certain things, to ambition, to other people's opinions, to the milestones you used to chase, to your own previous self, is now subtly different in ways you cannot fully name. That is the feeling of a root system that finished forming and is now waiting for the season to come up through. There is a name for what was happening underground during that period, a name from one of the oldest traditions of depth psychology, and learning the name does something important. It gives you a language for an experience that the surface culture has no language for. The name is individuation, the slow, often invisible, sometimes painful process by which a person stops being a collection of inherited scripts and assembled approval strategies and slowly, deliberately, begins to become whoever they actually are underneath all of it. It is not a single event. It is a long descent and a longer return. It is not pleasant. It is not photogenic. It produces nothing the comparison machinery can register as progress. And it is, by almost every serious account that has ever been written about the human inner life, the single most important thing a person can do in the second half of their life. The process does not announce itself. There is no calendar invitation. No one tells you you are entering it. You simply notice at some point that the things that used to feel like enough no longer feel like enough. That the goals that used to feel urgent now feel hollow. That the social configurations that used to fit you now press on you in ways you cannot quite describe. That you have started to find unbearable a level of performance and people-pleasing that, 6 months ago, you did not even notice you were doing. That the surface of your life, which used to feel like your life, has started to feel like a costume you have been wearing for so long you forgot it was a costume. And you do not yet know what is underneath. You only know the costume has become intolerable to keep wearing. This is the beginning of the descent, and the descent looks, from the surface, exactly like stalling, because that is what it is at the visible layer. You stop accepting opportunities you would have accepted a year ago. You stop maintaining relationships you would have maintained out of obligation. You stop chasing milestones you no longer believe in. You stop posting. You stop performing. You stop, in any way visible to the comparison machinery of the world, advancing. And the comparison machinery, yours and everyone else's, registers the visible stop and assumes you are losing the race. But there is no race. There never was a race. The race was a story produced by the surface scanning system to make sense of the limited data it could see. The story has no relationship to what actually determines the trajectory of a human life. The people who win, if we are going to use that word at all, which the framework of individuation does not really endorse, the people whose lives produce the most meaningful, the most enduring, the most quietly powerful results, are almost without exception people whose visible lives went through extended periods of looking exactly like nothing was happening. The visible stop was the precondition of the invisible build. The descent was the construction of the depth from which the eventual ascent would be supported. And the people who refused to descend, who stayed at the surface, who kept producing visible milestones because they could not bear the social cost of stopping, almost always built lives that look impressive in their 40s and start to feel hollow in their 50s, because their height exceeded the depth of their roots, and anything whose height exceeds its roots is not standing tall, it is falling slowly. Let's get specific about what is actually being constructed in the underground years, because the language of depth and roots is evocative, but it is not yet concrete. What is forming during the period when your visible life has gone quiet is something specific, and the specifics matter. The first thing forming is what we might call the dissolution of the false structure. For most of your young life, you constructed a version of yourself out of materials you did not choose. The expectations of your parents, the values of your community, the mirrors held up by your culture telling you what success looked like, what a good life looked like, what a person of your age and gender and background was supposed to be doing. You built a self out of all of that, mostly unconsciously, and that self ran your life for the first 2 or 3 decades. It worked more or less, produced visible results, sometimes impressive ones. It got you through, and then at some point it stopped working. The reasons vary: a crisis, an ending, a slow realization, a sudden one. But at some point the constructed self could no longer carry the weight of the actual life it was being asked to live. And what then begins, often slowly, often imperceptibly, is the dissolution of that constructed self. Belief by belief, expectation by expectation, internalized voice by internalized voice, it begins to come apart. You stop being able to believe the things you used to believe. You stop being able to want the things you used to want. The structure that was you starts to disassemble itself from the inside, and during this disassembly, almost nothing visible can be built, because all the construction equipment is busy taking the old thing down. This dissolution looks, from the outside, like a person losing their drive. From the inside, when you have any insight at all into what is happening, it feels like a slow internal earthquake, the rearrangement of foundations you did not know were foundations until they started to move. You cannot post about this. You cannot announce this. You cannot put it on a resume. It will not register in the metrics of your peers' comparison systems. And it is, without question, one of the most important things that will ever happen to you, because every authentic structure you ever build for the rest of your life depends on the false structure being cleared out first. There is no shortcut. The constructed self cannot be modified into the authentic self. The constructed self has to come down in its own time, at its own pace, in the silence that the visible world will read as stalling. The second thing forming simultaneously is the integration of what has been exiled. Every person, by the time they reach adulthood, has buried significant parts of themselves. The traits that did not get rewarded by their family, the emotions that were not safe to feel, the desires that were not approved of, the kinds of intelligence that did not fit the curriculum, the forms of expression that got mocked or ignored or punished. All of this gets pushed into a part of the psyche that is sometimes called the shadow, not because it is evil, but because it is what cannot be seen in the conscious light of the constructed self. And it does not disappear when it is buried. It waits, it accumulates, and during the descent, when the constructed self is dissolving, the shadow begins to rise. Not all at once, not violently, but steadily, presenting itself to you in dreams, in unexpected emotional reactions, in moments of strange recognition when you encounter people who seem to possess what you have spent your life burying. This is the integration, the slow, patient work of bringing back into yourself the parts of yourself you were never allowed to keep. And nothing on the surface can register that this is happening, because the surface only sees the result years later, when the integrated person emerges with capacities that the unintegrated person did not have, and the surface calls it sudden, and the surface is wrong because it was building underground the whole time. The third thing forming during the underground years is what almost no one talks about, and it is the most consequential of all. A new relationship with time. The constructed self lives in the time of comparison and milestones, the constant scanning of where you are versus where you should be by now, where others are versus where you are, what you have not yet achieved that you were supposed to have achieved. This time is a kind of agitated, anxious, accelerating time, and it is, for most people, the only time they have ever known. The descent, conducted long enough, slowly dissolves this time and replaces it with something else. A different kind of time, slower, more patient, more attentive to what is actually happening rather than what is supposed to be happening. The kind of time in which it is possible to do the deepest work because you are no longer interrupting yourself every 15 minutes to check whether you are falling behind. This new relationship with time is the foundation of every meaningful piece of work that has ever been produced by anyone. And it cannot be acquired through technique. It can only be acquired through the slow, often involuntary dismantling of the constructed self's relationship with time. The descent does that dismantling. There is no other way to acquire it. So you can begin to see, when we get specific, why this period looks like nothing from the outside. The dissolution of a false self, the integration of an exiled self, the construction of a new relationship with time. None of these things produce announcements. None of these things post well. None of these things make sense to a comparison machinery designed for surface scanning. The deepest work a human being can do is, by its nature, invisible to the systems most people use to evaluate their lives. And almost everyone who is doing this work will, while they are doing it, conclude they are failing, because the system they are using to evaluate themselves is incapable of recognizing the work they are doing as work at all. We need to talk now about the strange shape of what happens next, because this is the part the modern world genuinely cannot account for, and it is the part that explains why history keeps producing rediscoveries of people who appeared, during their own lifetimes, to have done nothing. There is a moment after the underground years have done their work, when something shifts. It is not a moment of triumph. It is not a moment of arrival. It is a moment of quiet inevitability, like the moment a tide turns and the water that was going out begins, almost imperceptibly, to come in. The dissolution finishes. The integration completes its essential work. The new relationship with time has become stable enough that you can rest in it without your old self pulling you back into anxiety. And from this new foundation, something begins to emerge, and what emerges is something the old you, the constructed you, could never have produced, because the old you did not have access to the materials that the descent gathered. What emerges is the authentic structure, the work, the relationships, the way of being in the world, the particular expression of you that could only ever have been built on the foundations the underground years constructed. And it does not emerge slowly. It does not emerge in the way the surface culture expects. After years of looking like nothing was happening, suddenly something is happening, and it is happening with a kind of force and clarity and rightness that no one who watched the surface could have predicted. The 90-foot bamboo in one season after 5 years of nothing. The work of a lifetime arriving, apparently from nowhere, in someone who appeared, by every external measure, to have been stalled. The book that was being assembled in silence for 15 years. The body of work that took form in a tower in a small village. The vision that consolidated in a cabin by a pond. The breakthrough that occurred during the years of plague when everyone else thought a young scholar was simply hiding at home. The pattern is consistent across centuries. The people who produced the work that outlasts them were, almost without exception, people whose visible lives went quiet for long stretches that their contemporaries read as stalling. We remember them now because what came out of those stretches changed something. They did not remember themselves that way at the time. At the time, they often felt exactly what you may be feeling now. That they were behind, that they had lost the race, that the world was moving on without them. And then the work emerged, and the surface reread them retrospectively as people who had been working all along, even though, to the surface scanners of their own moment, they had appeared to be doing nothing. The retrospective reading is more accurate than the contemporaneous one. They were working all along. The work just was not visible at the surface, because the work was building the depth from which the surface results would eventually arrive. And the same is true of you in the years you have been carrying around as evidence of being behind. The work was being done. You were doing it. You just did not know you were doing it because the culture you live in does not have language for the work, and you were running a surface scanner on your own life that could not detect the deeper layer where the work was actually happening. So here is what I am asking you to do. Tonight, sometime, sit with the period of your life you have been most ashamed of in this respect. The years of apparent stillness, of nothing happening, of feeling left behind. Do not try to spin them into something they were not. Do not try to construct a falsely heroic narrative about what you were really doing. Just sit with them and ask honestly the question almost no one ever asks. What was being built that I could not see? What capacities formed in me during that period that I now have and did not have before? What old structures of belief and identity and approval seeking are gone from me now that were running my life before? What can I do now in terms of how I see, how I think, how I feel, how I respond that I could not do before that period? You will find more than you expect. You will find, almost certainly, that you are a different person than the one who entered that period, different in ways that are not yet visible to the surface but are real and present and assembled. And you will begin to suspect, quietly, that the period was not a stall. The period was a construction. The construction is finished or close to finishing. And what comes next, if you allow it, is the emergence, the slow, deliberate appearance on the surface of what the underground years made possible. Let's address one more thing before we end, because it is the thing that most often pulls people back into the comparison trap right when they were about to step out of it. The thing is this: while you have been underground, other people have been visible. The friends, the acquaintances, the colleagues, the cousins, they have continued posting, advancing, accumulating. And the comparison machinery, even after everything we have just discussed, will not stop generating evidence that they are ahead and you are behind. So how do you live with that? How do you live in a culture in which every visible signal will keep telling you that you have fallen out of the race, when you have actually been doing the work that almost none of them have done? The honest answer is that you live with it the way every person who has ever taken this path has lived with it, by holding two truths simultaneously, without trying to resolve them, and without letting either of them collapse the other. The first truth is that the comparison machinery is doing what it was built to do, and you cannot reason it into stopping, and it will keep generating its signals for the rest of your life. You can notice this. You can refuse to take it seriously. You can develop the capacity to feel the comparison pulse without acting on it. But you cannot make it stop, and any approach to this path that promises you can is lying to you. The pulse will keep firing. You will simply, over time, stop believing what it says. The second truth is that the work you have been doing in the underground years is real, and it produces real returns, and the returns are coming. Not on the schedule the comparison machinery expects, not in the form the surface culture recognizes, but they are coming. The depth that was constructed will support a height that no one who skipped the construction can ever build. The integration that was completed will allow expressions of yourself that the unintegrated cannot produce. The new relationship with time will sustain the kind of patient work that the agitated time of the surface life cannot sustain. The returns are coming, and when they come, they will not look like a recovery from a stall. They will look like the first authentic thing you have ever done, because that, in fact, is what they will be. So if you are sitting in a room right now, late at night, and the apartment is quiet and the phone has stopped buzzing, and the quiet observation is rising in the back of your mind that you are behind, hear what this video has been trying to tell you. You are not behind. There was never a race. The years that looked like stalling were the construction of the only thing that ever mattered. The depth is real. The integration is real. The returns are coming. And the version of you that emerges from this period, the one that the comparison machinery cannot yet see, is the version that the rest of your life has been quietly waiting for. If this reached something real in you, if some quiet part of you just exhaled in recognition, then do something for me. Write in the comments these 4 words: I was going deeper. Just that. Because putting it into language is the first act of making it true, of stepping out of the comparison story and into the story of what was actually happening in you. Let's see how many of us are ready to stop apologizing for years that never owed us an explanation in the first place. And if this video moved you, give it a like, not for me, but as a small signal to yourself that you are choosing the deeper path. The next video continues where this one ends, into what to do with the depth, once you realize it has been forming in you the whole time. It is the harder question and the more important one. I will see you there.